Welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture Podcast. I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I'm Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about the movie Hereditary.
Today we are going to be talking about the sins of the father, about inherited mental illness.
We'll also be talking about family expectations and what that means for you.
We will also give you the saints of the movie.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, of course, we'll give you some contact information in case you want to get a hold of us.
Letting us know about your saints of the movie. So, spoiler alert, for those of you who have not yet seen the movie, count yourself lucky.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
There's a reason why we are recording this late. It was disturbing.
Mm-hmm. Caused me to have nightmares.
One of those ones that you're like, yeah, I'm glad I saw it once, but that's probably the only time I'm ever going to watch it.
Yeah, like The Ring. I'll never see it again.
Yeah, The Ring wasn't that disturbing. Paranormal Activity was disturbing to me. The first one. The rest of them were just kind of like, eh.
Well, the rest of them, I think since you already knew kind of the format or the novelty of it,
yeah,
kind of wore away.
That it wasn't really a true story. And it wasn't really found footage kind of thing.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but Blair Witch also is not real found footage.
Well, it was real in a way. The directors just tormented their cast. So, anyway, spoiler alert for the movie. If you have not yet seen it, we're going to be talking about a lot of the movie here. So, with that being said, let's give our summary and review. To summarize this movie, let's say a mother who makes dioramas of her family and her life experiences is struggling with her mother's death and worrying about her own mental illness, so much so that she misses the problems that are going on right in front of her with her own family. And then her children get possessed by demons.
All right. Well, technically one of her children was always possessed.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. My version of the summary. All right. So grandmother dies. Everybody is saddened. The mother is trying to get the son to get out of the house. He gets out of the house, goes to a party, takes his sister with. His sister ends up dying. And then everybody feels like they're going berserk, except for Steve, who's just an innocent bystander in all of this. And then at the end, everybody dies.
All right. Well,
and there's naked people.
Well, I guess Peter does die.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, his soul gets pushed away is how the director said it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it was, excised.
Sure.
I
don't know what
there
that
was
term
that
is.
scene at the school where Aunt Lydia was expelling Peter.
Yes.
By
the way, don't ever trust her if she's in a movie.
Yeah, she's just, don't ever trust her in pop culture.
Yeah, just don't.
So, my review, I am rather desensitized to horror movies, but this one disturbed me.
Tell me more.
I don't know if it was just because the son's name was Peter, and maybe because I struggle with my own inherited mental illnesses, or worrying about such things. And, well, I'm going to be talking about that, but it just, I haven't been able to sleep well since we watched it, which we watched it on Saturday night, and it's
Tuesday.
Tuesday. So, yeah. Paranormal Activity, I wasn't able to sleep for a week afterwards, thinking that there was a demon in my closet. This one, it's just I'm terrified that naked old people are in my house.
There's no naked old people in our house.
So I guess it was a good horror movie because it fulfilled the goal of the artwork that it was intending to be.
Sure. Yeah. I also have nightmares, like I said. The thing that gets me is the bugs really get me. My dreams for the past couple of nights have been filled with bugs.
Out of everything in the movie, is the bugs?
No, listen. So I researched this. So ants are a symbol of death in a lot of past art.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe it's some psychological thing about ants and bugs being on dead bodies that really creep me out.
That's out of everything.
Out of everything, it's the bugs eating dead. I think it's because the bugs indicate there's a dead body, not the bugs themselves. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So it's where did these come from? Where is this body? Because like one of my dreams, it was seriously like I was following a trail of bugs trying to find a dead body.
No.
Yeah.
No, mine was Toni Collette banging her head on the attic door thing and the sawing her own head off, which, yeah, both of those are just... Mm-hmm. Well, and both of them being symbols for losing one's mind. I mean, it's just... Yeah.
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 Well, and like any good horror movie, there is some very genuine themes that people need to take into consideration and really take in and figure out how it applies to your own life. Really.
Well, yes, I am afraid of losing my mind.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying that. No, I'm just saying like, in general, just like any other good horror movie, Hereditary does that for you. Like,
yes.
You are done watching it, and it's not just, oh, that scared me, or, oh, that's gory. Like, I hate gory. Just like for the sake of being gory, I hate it because it serves no purpose. Like, this type of movie, even though there was some gore, like, the actual themes and the story behind it, the plot
was moved forward by them.
Yep.
Well, it wasn't as gory as it could have been. Like, for instance, the Charlie being beheaded, like, there wasn't, like, a whole lot of blood. You didn't see her body, like, covered in blood or anything else like this. You just kind of knew it happened because there was silence from the back seat. Mm-hmm. Which I think brilliant moves on the actors' parts. The actors were incredible. Direction was incredible. So, yes, as far as a movie goes, it is a film. It is a piece of art. Mm-hmm. It is not entertainment.
Well,
for the sake of entertainment.
And then that scene that you specifically mentioned where she gets beheaded, that is actually that was the director's favorite scene to actually film because it's so complex. Like there's a lot going on and you have to get a lot of stuff in a very short amount of time.
Well, and he did it, like the storytellers, the writers and the director just did a fantastic job of telling the story in that scene. Mm-hmm.
And I, to be honest, was I didn't think that she was going to die so soon. And I thought the whole movie was about her.
Yeah. The poster kind of makes it feel like it is.
Yeah.
And everybody talking about her specifically was kind of like, oh yeah, the movie, she's going to be in the movies a lot more. And it's like, oh.
I know. It's like, oh, I guess not. Okay. Anyway, talking about that, let's move on.
Yeah. So, as I said, I'm going to be talking about inherited mental illness, particularly about Annie's fears about the inherited mental illness. And she brings us up kind of briefly in the group therapy session, the group grief counseling group. Grief Anonymous. I don't know. Well, whatever you call it.
I was about to say, it's not really counseling because it is a group thing. Well, maybe it's a group
therapy is the thing. Yeah. Well, she's worried because Ellen kind of controlled her lives. And so this is kind of both of that nature and nurture kind of thing, is that your environment has a lot to do with triggering how much your inherited mental illness can affect you. For instance, myself with working in the church, I had a lot of issues with identity there, with always trying to be somebody that somebody else wanted me to be. That led to constant anxiety about myself, constant anxiety that affected my relationships with my family. Mm-hmm. And so I think that Annie here there is an inherited mental illness that she can't do anything about, but there's also that part that, she developed herself through interactions with her mom, with, Ellen, and with, her own family. So I really think that Annie's fear of inherited mental illness kind of kept her from seeing the bigger things that were going on. It kept her from a relationship with Peter, as Peter kind of talks about a little bit later on, and Annie talks about with Aunt Lydia. Man, I wrote her name down, I think. Joan. Yes. Yeah.
It's if you can't remember, just envision
the mat. Mm-hmm. Joni.
Yep.
Yes. And she talks about it that, he kind of fears her. And this was in the sleepwalking dream that he's afraid of her. And she admits to him in the dream. She didn't want kids because she didn't want to pass on that mental illness. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of the same as Steve in The Haunting of Hill House. And, there's so many of us who are writers, and we were watching Disenchantment this last week, season 2, which we're not going to be doing an episode on it, but I didn't find it as good as season 1. Is all writers have their own personal demons to deal with, and that's how they deal with it. Is they create their own worlds and they create different characters that deal with some of the same things that they develop in those way. And this is the way that Annie deals with it, is she creates these little pieces. And in a sense, it's sort of the storyteller's way of saying that this is kind of the artist's way of dealing with their own problems without communicating it with their family. And I think that plays into so many of these fears that she has, is that she's afraid of what her family's going to become. She's afraid of her children, of what they're going to become from the inherited mental illness. She's afraid that they're going to commit suicide like her brother, or that these things are going to happen. And when they do happen, it makes her lose her head, quite literally. Mm-hmm. So, and I think this is something that, a theme that we can pull from it, especially for me, is that we can't be so afraid of our things and so self-insulated that we don't actually communicate. We don't communicate our fears or our depressions or worries or whatever.
Yeah, because as I said before in many other podcasts, communication is key.
So, speaking of communication, is there a mental illness or something from your family that you're kind of afraid to pass on as a parent to our son?
Yes.
Like what?
So in my family, we have, there's bipolar disorder. We also have, obviously, addiction. I've talked about that before. Borderline personality as well, too, runs in my family. And depression and anxiety. So all of them.
Well, I mean, the sort of outdated statistics from the National Association for Mental Illness says that 1 in 5 adults will experience a mental illness event over the course of a year, which that was back from 2015. It's been 4 years since then. I'm pretty sure there's worse now.
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure that I've seen articles stating that the cases of depression amongst people have actually increased since 2016. I wonder why.
Well, to quote from somebody who famously gave that reason why, a really bad stink eye and side eye, from Greta Thunberg, she just gave a brilliant speech to the UN about stealing children's futures with climate change. And I want to relate that to this movie, particularly because in this, I think that, in a sense, Annie kind of stole her children's futures, in a sense, just by her worry, just by her anxiety about who they were going to become, rather than actually being involved in their lives and trying to be a part of what they were becoming.
Well, not to mention that anxiety actually, like if somebody who has a history of sleepwalking, when you're anxious and suffering from a lot of anxiety during the day, that actually influences the types of sleepwalking, and I can't remember what the actual term is, but doing stuff besides just sleepwalking in your sleep.
Yes.
So like the more anxious that you are, the more played out the scenarios can be.
Another one of the scenes that I really wanted to talk about was particularly Steve's stand against Annie, was that dinner scene where it was the three of them, was Peter, Steve, and Annie. And they're really not talking. They're not communicating. But when they do, it's not a healthy communication. It becomes this yelling match. And finally, Annie kind of lets the floodgates open on Peter and it was a little unnecessarily. The point where he's afraid of her, and you could tell that he's afraid of her, and he's trying to get it out. He's trying to get out why she's being passive aggressive, why she's being like this, instead of actually being there. And I think this is something that is a lot like religion, and this is something that I just had a conversation recently about. It's so weird that Christianity kind of has this offshoot from Judaism, where it became about the afterlife. It became about storing up, things for the afterlife rather than taking care of the here and now.
Like your points?
Exactly. That, in Judaism, that, it's much more of the, here and now. There is no afterlife. You treat everybody good because this is all we have. That when you treat other people well, your treasure is that person. That person will come for you when you need them. That kindness will be repaid. And I think this is seen so much in that scene, is that Steve is trying to be, the mediator and saying, look, no. Okay, communication is good, but this is too much. This is too far. There was that part of it where he was trying to be the middle ground, the mediator. And I think at this point, he is so far gone worrying about everybody else's mental well-being that he can't be a good mediator either. And so much of us do this in our own lives, that we just worry about other things.
Well, and to be fair, he doesn't have any idea what's actually going on. Like, he's not experiencing anything that these other two people are experiencing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all he knows is like, okay, well, I know we've experienced 2 family members dying in a very short amount of time. And I know that they're going through grief, but that's all he knows, And so he
also knows that Grandma's grave was dug up.
Well, yeah, but even then, like, the other 2 don't know that, so they wouldn't know, or so that wouldn't be affecting their mental state. So he just, for all he knows, these people are just normally, like, this is how they grieve. He doesn't understand or doesn't know that there's a lot of other crap going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like ghosts and demons. Literal ghosts and demons.
Yes.
And creepy people who, are creepy.
Well, are there any conversations that you're afraid to have with Peter, especially with our Peter, in the future, especially when it comes to things like this, that you're worried for his future, in the sense that it's keeping you from having a conversation? Well, he's 3.5. He's not going to be able to.
Yeah, I'm going to have a lot of time to think about this.
Anyway, the original question is, are there conversations that you're afraid to have with Peter, our son?
I'm more afraid of not having those conversations. I think one of the reasons, for example, as I said before, one of the reasons why I am very hypervigilant over mental illness based on my family's history, and also primarily addiction, is because I myself was able to observe the bad behavior and was able to observe the outcomes of not recognizing the warning signs.
Yeah.
So, and addiction is, or it's kind of, I don't know. I've seen it both ways, where some people say that addiction is hereditary. Roll credits. Other places say that it's not, that it's more of a social thing. So, I just view it as more of a hereditary, because I feel like I can easily hold myself more accountable. And I want to make sure that Peter has those tools as well. So that's why I'm more afraid of not having those conversations, because I want to make sure that he has those tools and he has the, at least knowledge, or he has the idea that he needs to keep an eye out for those things.
Yeah.
Am I making any sense at all?
Yes. For me, I definitely worry, especially that he's going to have the same level of anxiety that I do. But as I'm trying to remind myself, part of my anxiety is the way that I grew up.
Yeah.
And especially in the kind of the way that the evangelical Christian church doesn't really allow for non-anxious people to survive very easily within their boundaries.
Well, no, you can't be anxious because it's all God's will.
Oh, I know. And see, it's a reliance on the spiritual figure. It's almost a cult-like behavior. Anyway, speaking of that, the really interesting thing that the reason why I called this Sins of the Father is especially because the movie's called Hereditary, but this is something that... Well,
technically it's more based on matriarchs.
Matriarchs, but I'm saying that this is something that is a biblical phrase. The way that it's translated into English, it's Sins of the Father are counted to whatever generation, blah, blah, blah. And it's across the Torah, the Christian Old Testament, the Jewish, just the Jewish scriptures about people who are having these anxieties of, okay, well, what if the father is guilty of the sin? Should the sin should be counted to the child as well? Are they going to be punished for whatever the father does? Or is the father going to be punished for what the kid does? And, there's different takes in the Torah, whether or not that's true, whether they should be both be guilty or one or the other. And it's a common human characteristic of being worried for your offspring and being worried for your family in such a way. So these are very big archetypal things.
Yeah.
So.
I just don't, in general, I don't agree with that because a person is their own individual person and who their parents are shouldn't matter, period.
Oh, exactly. But it's an archetype for our society. It's an archetypal story that goes back way generations and like thousands of millennia that we've always done this. We've always worried about such things.
Well, I hope that we're at the point in our society, though, that it's not as prevalent. That's just kind of what I think. I don't think people judge me based on my parents.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say. Yep. I hope people judge me based on my grandma, though, because she was amazing. All right. So I'm going to move a little bit more towards family expectations. Everyone who, well, I guess is a part of a family has some set of family expectations, even if they're not like said out loud.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that totally is the case with Annie and her family. But the thing with Annie is she kind of knew that something was different about her mom and like not in a healthy way. And so she did what I would advise most people to do. And she stood back from her mom for a while, or stepped back from her mom, didn't really have a relationship with her after she, I guess, left the nest until she had Charlie. And even then, it is when she was talking about it, she made it seem like she didn't really want her mom back in Charlie's life, or well, in her life, period. And that she was more doing it out of expectations or out of guilt, family guilt, which we can all get, especially us people in our 30s, I guess. Yeah. Like, I feel like family expectations, like there's different levels of family expectations, like going through life. Of course, like right after high school, there's a whole set of family expectations of what you're supposed to do after high school. And then as you grow up, there's a lot of families, there's that expectation of staying near home and like taking care of the elderly folk in your family, which I think is why we always get questions like, why are you here in Cleveland? Like, you don't have any family here. You're not from here. Why are you here? Like,
we just stayed.
Well, there's a lot of reasons why we're here, but, but it's not a common occurrence. That's why everybody's so fascinated with us. Like, you don't have any family, not in Ohio, period. Like, it's very weird. And then even we have some friends who do have family in Ohio, but they're a couple hours away in a different city. And even that, it's like, there's no family in town. Like, you don't have any family in town. Like, the closest family is a couple hours away. And that's even seen as strange. So, I don't know.
Well, I think mostly for Midwesterners, because they tend not to move too far from home. And it's pretty common for millennials, especially now, to kind of move where the work is. And I don't know what Stephen definitely not living off of Annie's money, because...
What are you talking about? No, I'm just kidding. I don't know.
I don't know how much money her art would make.
Is he a doctor?
I don't know. But it's obviously they're living in the West somewhere. They're living in like probably the Rocky Mountain State because of the backdrop. And yeah, like how can you afford that house? That house is like beautiful.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he must have some kind of money. And that's another thing. If you have money, you're expected to, help out your family. Which makes sense. If you're, if you're the person that has the money, it's easier for you to take care of elderly family members. But that, again, is an expectation that's put upon you if you happen to be the sibling who has the money. In Annie's case, though, she's the only sibling because her mom drove her brother crazy. And she even says that he killed himself because he was convinced his mom was putting voices in his head or something. Was
putting other people in him.
Yes, yeah. Which we come to find out
was the case.
Well, yeah, probably was the case.
Yes.
And that's another reason why that she decided to, keep that distance from her mom is because of what happened to her brother. Like she doesn't know exactly what it is, but she feels like something her mom did cause his death. Mm-hmm. And so she's just a little wary of it, which totally makes sense. I back Annie up in her decision for this.
Well, and it's important to have those healthy boundaries with family. It's important to say to take yourself out of the equation, out of the drama when it's escalating. And you're probably going to ask me about that here in a second, anyway.
I was about to say, since we have a sense sometimes when things are off. Well, no, this is a different question.
Oh, okay.
I'll talk a different. Yeah. Anyway, let me repeat that again. We have a sense sometimes when things are off. It could be off like in a situation or off for a specific person. So can you name a time that you felt uneasy and it turns out your intuition was correct? Like how Annie she felt uneasy about her mom, but she didn't know what that was. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. I'm trying to think of a specific instance here. I know there's a lot of times when, I have anxiety. So there's a lot of times where I'm going to feel off. And so, there's times when, especially that moment when, your boss texts you, can I see you in my office in the morning? Mm-hmm. Probably because twice now that has been I'm going to fire you in the morning text.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking more about like one-on-one situations, like with a person, like face to face. Like you were just like, this person he or she doesn't make me feel safe. Like I feel like I need to
have other people here. Yes. Uh-huh. I can't think of any specific instance. I know that there have been instances of that where usually it's, let's wait for somebody else to show up or let's, have somebody else here so that I'm not the only one in this situation with you, just keeping myself protected in that way.
Yeah. Have a witness.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. For me, man, I feel like as a woman, I felt this a lot. Like I've definitely crossed the street because I felt uneasy about somebody, like the way they looked at me. I've definitely, grabbed my phone and pretended to have a call, in order to make myself look busy so somebody would leave me alone. I'm trying to think of a time though that my intuition was correct. Oh, I have an idea. Okay, so I went on a blind date with this guy. I get there and immediately I'm like, you don't really look like the photo I was shown. So that's always like, okay. And then he stands up and he's wearing camo from head to toe, but not like in military garb. Like this is just like went to Walmart, got a t-shirt that has camo print on it. And then the camo prints on his shirt and on his pants were different colors and different patterns. So they clearly didn't match.
Well, I'm surprised you noticed him because he was wearing all camo.
Oh, ha, 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 ha. Anyway, so like throughout the date, like, I don't know, like for some reason we were talking about the war in Iraq because that was going on in the time and how he wanted to join the military, but he couldn't for one reason or another. And I'm just like, like, this is kind of weird, dude. And he's like, yeah, I'm really passionate about our country and blah, blah, blah. And now, knowing what I know now, he's probably like a skinhead or like some kind of like a radical right-wing something or other because, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then at the end of the date, mind you, he was shorter than me, which I was not told about. So that also kind of threw me off. But he, at the end of the date, was like, okay, so can you give me a ride home? I don't have a car. And I was like, well, I guess. And so I drive him home. I don't even get out of the car. Like when I drive him home, I'm like, no, I'm not getting out of this car. No, I don't want you to give that impression. And then he was like, well, it was really nice talking to you. I look forward to talking to you again. And I'm like, bye.
I'll keep your resume on file.
Nah. That resume just went right into the shredder. But yeah, so I feel like I dodged a bullet. I can't tell you 100% why I feel that way, but just all of the wrong triggers, just like it was one right after the other, and it was bad. It's bad.
So, mental note for you, camo guy, if you happen to ever listen to our podcast, mental note for future dates, don't wear camo to your date and don't talk all about how you love our country.
Well, it wasn't that he loved the country, but the fact that I wanted to join the military, but they wouldn't let me. But he wouldn't dive into why they wouldn't let him. So that's because at the time they were pretty much begging people to sign up. So that's why I was like, there must be something. Anyway, and that was over 10 years ago. So yeah, it's kind of silly to give him dating advice now, but.
Well, you never know.
All right. So back to the movie, back to Annie. At this point in time, we learn that the reason why she let her mom move in is because she felt pressured. As I mentioned before, she felt pressured her mom was aging. Her mom was showing signs of dementia and some other health issues. So she just thought this was the good daughterly thing to do and to bring her mom in. And
well, I think she said something about Steve talking her into it, rekindling the relationship.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Steve, this is why communication is so important. I don't think Steve understood her true feelings about the whole situation.
Exactly.
Especially with that scene that you brought up with them arguing at the dinner table. Like, that's a lot of like pent up feelings that she was not sharing with anybody. So I'm sure that she wasn't 100% honest with Steve about why she didn't want to be around her mom. Yeah. Well, and the fact that her mom was keeping so many secrets.
Oh, yeah.
As well, too. Like, not just, hey, I'm part of this weird group of people who, are looking forward to killing you. But also the fact that her mom she didn't know any of her mom's friends, period. Mm-hmm. She didn't lie to her and say, hey, I'm part of this embroidery group, which would have been an easy thing to do, But nope. No, yeah. She just kind of glossed it over. So that was really weird. So when have you felt obligated to help a family member, even if you didn't want to?
Oh, well, see, there's the question that I was alluding to earlier. Well, currently, there are some family issues that are going on. My father is in the hospital, and we don't have the ability to go down there right now with our family issues with having to go out to Montana a few times due to losing both grandparents and your stepfather. It was kind of rough.
Yeah.
Like financially, we're still trying to get back on track. And, with a 3.5-year-old, it's hard for us to, take time off of anything.
Yep.
Because if I go by myself, that leaves you alone to handle everything with Peter, and, that's just not a good thing. Then that means we would have to take you and me and Peter, and where are we going to stay? And traveling with a 3.5-year-old is just madness, and for the three of us to take a last minute flight is like more than $1,000.
Yeah, like $2,000.
But the expectation is there that, you know, he's your father, he's in the hospital, you need to be there, you need to advocate for him. And, you know, my sister pushing me to do that, it's more than I can do. And I needed to set boundaries and say, I can't. It's okay to say I can't because I can't. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's not a good situation. It's not something that I'm feel good about, but it's something that, you know, I just can't. Mm-hmm.
Well, and in situations like that, you going there isn't going to make a difference.
No.
You know, just like I did really want to go see my grandma before she passed away while she was in the coma. But again, me going there it didn't make a difference. You know, she was going to die on the day that she was going to die. There was plenty of family members there, just like there's plenty of family members with your dad right now. Mm-hmm. So it was hard, yeah, but ultimately, like, I also have to take into consideration my immediate family group, the three of us. So, and Luke. I mean, because then we'd have to figure out like dog as well too. So yeah, it's tough. So I've been there. But there's some good news. What if I told you a little secret?
Okay.
You don't have to do anything for your family.
Well, you don't have to, but there is a sense that, you know, their blood, they are family, no matter how horrible they are, is, you know, to kind of try to bridge the gaps to mend the relationships that are there. But then there's also that the reverse of that, you know, is
they've had
setting
plenty
boundaries.
of time. Well, and two, that's putting a lot of pressure on the person not dying. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, like, I feel like in those situations, the person who is the one not dying is a person who needs to apologize, which isn't always the case. Like in my case with a specific family member, like, I know that I probably won't go out there. Like, yeah, I'll take some time off for myself and like do my own like at home grieving, but I'm not going to go there on his deathbed and like try to make amends because it's too late. They've had enough time to make amends while they were healthy and alive and living, and they didn't take advantage of that. And that's not my fault. And that's not your fault.
Well, I think that just seeing her mother in the hospital was a difficult thing for her, because that was one of the dioramas that she was working on was her mom in the hospital as well. And I think that's what her way of coping with the hard situations, with the traumatic events, is by making those art pieces about them. Mm-hmm. Remembering every single last detail, even if she wasn't there, because you see later the Charlie's accident in there, and you see that one creepy instance of her mom at the door while they were sleeping, and the other one where she's feeding Charlie and her mom is like taking off her own dress, and it was just like, yeah, there's a lot of naked old people in this movie. There's a lot of
naked old people. If you don't like naked old people, don't watch this movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we are running out of time, so let's go ahead and just jump into our saints real quick.
Yes. We don't really have any big miracles that they performed, but I'm going to say
these are more blessings than putting saints.
The grief group.
Mm-hmm. You're just going to say the grief group?
The grief group.
Because they were there.
Because they were there. That's it.
Because they were there and they weren't out to get them.
Yes.
I'm going to do the other obvious answer, and I'm going to choose Steve, because I still hold to the fact that he was an innocent bystander in all of this. He had no idea what was going on, and he just burned up.
Yeah, yeah.
He had no idea. No idea.
That man was on fire.
He was on fire. And sometimes
literally,
ignorance is not bliss.
True. Communication is key. This is what we should take away from this movie. Communication is key.
Yes, communication resolves all future problems.
All right, so what did you guys take away from this movie? What saints do you have from Hereditary? Let us know.
yeah, so you can go ahead and reach us at Patron Saints of Pop Culture for our Facebook and our Instagram. You can also get a hold of us at our website at
www.patronsaintsofpopculture.org.
Yes, thank you.
So with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.